talk about research topic or ideas that some scientists or researchers they go after these ideas, but general public really isn't much aware of it, and that's some of it has to do with the really old archaeology, some has to do with technologies that were abandoned or are going to be rediscovered and used again, or rejigging the economy to do other things. Anyhow, I was talking, I was working with this guy a long time ago, and he was kind of like a shady character. Anyhow, we were both from Iran, and we were talking about Jews, wealthy Jews, and he was telling me, Hassan, you spend so much time researching and studying different stuff. What happened to your graduate coursework, and none of that stuff really matters in the kind of economy we have here and in Iran. Is because well, over here it's mostly controlled by wealthy corporations and Jews, and over there there are also Jews, but a lot of the economy is also old-fashioned economy. Like his family had businesses, my family had businesses, and so on. But they're all very old-fashioned businesses, very, very basic. And he was saying that many of the Jews that become bankers or they become like CEOs of corporations, they don't have much of education. They usually graduate from high school, or they are not smart either, but they basically go into an industries that already very well established, like something that they're comfortable, their family or society was comfortable dealing with. And this brings out another subject, that there is a lot of wealth and technologies that the people who are businessmen or corporations, they're not comfortable with that technology and they don't use it. And sometimes this technology or this wealth can have astounding results or create astounding wealth, but because the people who are in charge of many of these corporations or businesses, like his family or even mine, they are very limited in their perspective. They're not very bright. They don't want to either use it or they shelf it, or the technology that's there, it can revolutionize society in a way that they are not comfortable living in that society, because they will not be important anymore. They will be they'll be just like anybody else. I was like reading that I think it was J.P. Morgan or other bankers, they kind of suppressed Nikola Tesla and his work. They didn't want to finance. There's a lot of stuff that he had discovered or invented, or that these people they didn't want, because even, for example, he had discovered that you could transmit electricity wirelessly. You don't need all these wires, and it costs money because there's some of the energy is depleted because of resistance of wires. And in fact, I was looking at the Martian anomalies and also on the moon anomalies, and you can see that the previous civilizations that were there, they used some kind of parallel plates, like two plates that are parallel. I guess these parallel plates were some kind of receptors, And also you find on Mars and on Moon, you find these very high towers. I guess what they were doing, they were basically using Tesla's invention, or somebody else had invented it before, or they knew about it, and they were transmitting the electricity wirelessly, and all these parallel plates, small or large, they were able to absorb this wireless electricity and then use it for local devices or whatever. So, and that's just one discovery that Tesla had. I know of another one that the American government totally represses, or they have these devices and they don't use it. And I was watching Nazi Germany's UFO devices that made. I guess the Germans, well, this program was running very very advanced stage in Nazi Germany, and they had studied the ancient texts, and they knew that there are other ways of making a vessel travel, or they knew about anti-gravity. Anti-gravity is something that's now very complicated. Some of the literature they refer to it as electrogravity, but the idea is that if most of these devices they use mercury, and it circulates in what they call it superconducting coil, and creates magnetism. But if you study standard model of physics, you know that the forces of nature are related, they're tied. Somehow electromagnetism is tied to gravity, and you can generate anti-gravity by these coils. I saw a lot of examples, but there is other ways of doing this too, but that's the simplest one. And they had made some devices. Well, the first one they did was like some kind of, instead of having a motorcycle, they had this device that would kind of jump up off the ground and travel, and they were using it for crowd control. Then they built other copies. They were just like UFOs, and you can see some of the old pictures. There is the Nazi guns mounted on the bottom or the top of their UFO style, and then there's a lot of rumors that the Nazis they escaped or they had bases in Antarctica. Cliff High talks about this stuff. I don't know if there is still those bases or they're in the moon, but then looking at the footage of moon anomalies and Mars and all, there is so much evidence that there was civilization there. In fact, if you look at the Apollo moonshots on the surface, you see all these objects that are like cone-shaped. They were at the top of a building, and I guess there was a glass dome that was protecting. Either it got bombarded by meteorites, or 65 million years ago there were an explosion in the solar system that bombarded everything, including Earth, with debris. I don't know. You cannot miss this stuff, because even if you just look at the photos that were very much brushed up, you still see many cones everywhere. And also on the Mars, the number of anomalies is astounding. There's the signs of it everywhere. I guess the whole planet was covered with buildings and structures. I guess there are some theories that it was also nuked about 100,000 years ago, and then there is civilizations underneath the planet's surface in Sidonia. This stuff is just mostly research, but it shows that uh, the people who use the technology, or they have an economic system, because they may be retarded or they're very old-fashioned, they could dictate what kind of technologies we're gonna use. In the United States, a lot of the world, well, the Jews, or wealthy bankers, they were the ones that did the financing of companies, and they suppressed a lot of technologies, and a lot of these technologies came back after the internet, because people could access it or know about it. For example, I never had an idea that the Nazis were so advanced in aerospace industries, and that actually a lot of the planes, the stealth planes, were their inventions or discoveries. And I don't know. I think I'm gonna have a video. It talks about the resilience of intelligent beings. I don't think that the Nazis really disappeared. I think they escaped and they lay low, and then I don't know. There is some literature or some videos about these Antarctic bases, and the fact that the United States had tried to destroy them. But I think that the U.S. government established very hostile relations with aliens, with Martians that are still functioning or there, or they tried to nuke the moon, because moon is really a vessel. But these ideas are kind of wild right now. My channel mostly Muslims or Iranians, they look at this stuff. What I'm saying probably sounds totally nuts, but it's not. But I wanna go another place. I wanna say that when these bankers, these groups of people that are running the economy here or a lot of countries, when they go belly up, when they go bankrupt, and then, or when the United States government falls apart, a lot of these technologies that they have hidden in different labs, or they found on Mars or Moon, it's gonna become like available, and people listen and say, oh my god, I can do this, I don't need to burn gasoline, or well, the reason that we are still burning gasoline might not be the fact that gasoline is so precious and there is no other technologies that can replace. It might be that those guys, they own all these oil companies and car manufacturers, and they just the blockheads, they don't want things to change, because in the future they might not need these guys. But the change happens because people become desperate. When a system falls apart, then people will look around, oh, what can I do? I mean, say for example, there is a real crisis, financial, or with the oil industry. Then people are going to look around and try to find some of these technologies and the ways of doing things. Well, the other effect will be that when there is a very high level technology that somebody discovers, say for example we discover, or the society comes to know, hey, there is electrogravity and it's not that hard to make these things, then what will happen is that a lot of people will go in that direction. A lot of devices will be made, like a new kind of computer that comes in. Okay, a lot of stuff that you need to do is going to be shifted into that new technology. But then what happens is that there is all the devices, all the planes, and then oh, either a society will abandon all the technologies and just go with this new technology, or they're gonna become integrated into new technologies. But it could happen that, for example, there is a very established technology or practice. Say, for example, there were horses and wagons, and then the car industry came along, and then people stopped using horses and wagons. But now the horses and that industry, caring for horses, or sporting goods that relate to horses, become like a specialized. It acquires a certain value because a certain minority is very wealthy. Hey, they don't want to give up the horses. Doesn't matter how fast the cars go, because it has some other meaning to them. And so that industry didn't die, but it was kind of transformed. It also acquired the value that it never had before. Because before, a horse was just like any car. But now a horse is special. Also, caring for a horse is not that cheap. I don't know. I was reading in the paper that on the Persian Gulf, the Saudis had confiscated a ship, not a ship, but a balam. A balam is this like a little, what they call it, a little wind-driven boat. Okay, so inside the balam they found some weapons. Okay, but there is weapons are flourishing everywhere. But then they made a big deal out of it. But then the people who were giving the weapon or selling the weapon, they had every chance to use a regular high-speed boat, but they chose this because it was cheaper, and it didn't really matter how fast you got the weapons across. So what I'm saying is that when a high-level technology evolves, that kind of makes or shifts things around, but that doesn't mean that all the technology is going to get abandoned. But then also, yeah, we humans have a very long history. There's all this archaeology in the moon and on the Mars. I wonder what kind of technologies are there that they could make us very wealthy. But I think it would come from desperation, or the way I would use it. These new technologies or archaeology is to use it to rejig United States tourism, because this place, tourism really has died here, and the government is extremely nutty, and also a lot of reasons that existed for some businessman or somebody to come in and make a business or family here have gone away because of unending warfare with foreigners, unending hostility. For example, Trump wanted to come in to California, and his only reasons for coming in here, he wants to inspect the stupid wall that he wants to build by the border. But then if Trump vaporized and there was no wall, Even we weren't even connected to the U.S. government, or we're not even part of it, then our economy would just flourish and boom, because there's all this trade with Mexico, and the Mexicans are not afraid of buying or selling or coming and going, and well, it's just like an abandoned or prohibited kind of wealth that you have with foreigners, which is trade, which is simple trade, that we are trying to destroy that too. But another reason is that white women are very reserved. Like, what are you? But once the society becomes poorer because of all these stupid things the government does, then people are going to look around, see what other wealth I have, what other things I have that I could use. Or I had a teacher, Mr. Kasravi. He was in charge of the old books in Iran. They're usually handwritten, and the curator or the museum director come in, and he was working on the books, and he said, "Oh, you mean these? These just some books." Yeah, but he told him, "But you don't know the kind of wealth, spiritual or scientific or historical wealth that's in just these books." That you could open up one book. For example, right now, archaeologically, they discover copies of the Bible that were like somebody put it in a jar and sealed it and buried it, or put it in a wall, and the wall is rediscovered, and then, hey, you got a whole new New Testament. Like, this is valuable. And what I'm trying to go at is that there is a lot of wealth there in abandoned technologies and abandoned histories, abandoned buildings, and also all the stuff that the U.S. government is repressed all these years. Once this system gets into a mode where it knows it's bankrupt, then there will be a reason to go look at these things again. I think tourism is also one way. Well, yeah. Anyhow,